Hello everybody, Watson here. Thanks for stopping by this video. Today I'd like to make a short video about the Jerome Gambit and how to face it. And first I'll start off with a Blindfold game from recently, as I usually like to do. So this game was played against one of my coworkers, a young lady who played very well. She said she played against her dad a lot, and her dad, she said she never won against her dad, but still, a strong player, still beginner player, but perfect to play a blindfold game against. The last blindfold game lasted about 21 moves or 20 moves or so. This game lasted till full 21 moves, so felt like it stretched my mind a little bit. So happy to see improvement there. So let's dive right in. I have the black pieces, but um, I know you guys wonder like, why don't you flip the board? But it's easier for me to visualize it as white when I'm playing blindfolded. So just for that, I'm gonna leave it as white. So um, the white player began with knight f3. I answered d5, knight c3, and you see Lichess gives that a questionable move. Basically, what we're playing is like a reverse Mexican defense, or where when you normally play d4, um, if black played knight c6 and knight f6, all that. So it's a similar setup. d4, taking the space, and then knight over to the corner, knight a4, knight c6, c3. And here I was like, oh man, this person might know what they're doing a little bit because they already know about attacking the pawn in the center or undermining the pawn. Well, so I defended it, and then knight c2. And here already, if you were not playing blind, you might be able to see that this knight could be trapped over here. Fortunately, I didn't really see that too much, so I continued just enjoying the center and continuing to develop. I didn't play e4. G6, another sort of questionable move. It says knight f6 is best, but that's beside the point, to be honest. Still have a good position. b3, bishop f5, kind of the point of g6, to attack the queen, and I'm not really afraid of e4 because I can always just take en passant and still be attacking the queen. So we had queen b2, and here I all of a sudden realized, oh, you put the queen there, so that means the knight can't retreat. Not realizing that the bishops has this under control, and this is already controlled from these pawns. So even if I push b5, it would already be trapped. But anyway, finally I played b5, and knight takes d4. I'm not exactly sure what the idea was. Just another piece, and then e captures d4, c captures d4, and b captures a4, and then b captures a4. And now rook b8, and at this point, I think the player with the white pieces thought that the queen was on b1 maybe, or that they weren't playing blindfolded, but still, for some reason, there must have been some confusion of the moves because they thought the queen was trapped. I'm like, wait, you still have one place to go, so they found it and went to c3. And here, of course, this happens all the time when I'm playing blindfolded. Just totally forgot that there is a pawn that was gone, and so this knight is no longer defended, or even forgot about the fact that the knight was undefended at all, and just played bishop g7 and captured on c6 with check. It's not the end of the world. Still up a piece, and queen d7, queen back to c5, and then knight e7, so I can castle. Queen takes on a7, kind of expected at this point. This player hasn't really done a whole lot with the pieces on the king side. Went pawn grabbing and threw the pieces on the side of the board. So not a very like I said strong player earlier, but it's like a beginner would play, like taking pawns because it's hanging and just going after pieces when in the whole grand scheme of things, you have greater troubles, especially with no development over here on the king side. But anyway, queen takes a7, and then of course the principal move, just castling, bishop a3, which is actually putting pressure on the knight, which is good. It's a useful place to develop. And then rook a8, attacking the queen. Queen went back to c5, and I realized that the knight was attacked twice, and I went rook on f to e8, which says it's a mistake because I could have just played knight c6, but for some reason I thought of I couldn't see myself allowing this attack on the rook. I figured the queen would just move and then the bishop would be attacking the rook, but whatever. And now rook b1, which to all you looking at the board, obviously you see there's an issue with that move, which again, the player with the white pieces didn't see, even though they were not playing blindfolded. Bishop takes d4, queen retreats to b4, and knight d5, saying, okay, I'm attacking your queen. You won't take this bishop, right? And it's funny that Leach just doesn't call this a blunder, but really it's just a dumb move because this bishop is on pre. But I asked after the game, but apparently this just totally, my opponent didn't see it at all and just played rook, queen b7. And now rook from a to b8. Slightly dubious because obviously the best move for white here, if you know what's coming, is to trade for both the rooks and try to survive. But instead, we had queen a6, and I'm pretty sure everybody can spot the next move. Yep, rook takes b1 check. And at this point, the player with white pieces realized, oh, I'm going to get mated. And I mean, the next few moves were basically played like when rook b1 was played. We just kind of just said, okay, yep, that's what happens. Game's over. And white pretty much resigned at that point. So, pretty, all in all, interesting blindfold game. If you're a beginner player, obviously you could see a few things that went wrong. First, putting the knight on the edge of the board, not putting any pawns in the center to oppose the advance of black's pawns, and thus the center fell to black because there was no fighting back against the center. And then the two knights were here, which it's a hyper modern opening to attack the center later on, but the problem here was there was never any attack on the center and no development by any of these pawns here. So black just straight up took the center, developed all the pieces, and had a pretty good game. So develop your pieces, move pawns to stop black's pawns from advancing, or the enemy's pawns from advancing if you're black. So enjoyable game there, and kind of boosted my confidence a little bit to think, okay, maybe let's go for 22 moves next time. So maybe in a future video you'll see that. And the topic of today's video is the Jerome Gambit. So it was this position right here, and I'll go through all the moves and show you how we get to it. First off, this is a dangerous line. It's a dubious line, but it's something that people would face all the time online if they're aggressive or they want to play something tricky. It can be scary, and unfortunately there's a lot of times where white just gets an advantage and wins against black, because if you're not prepared for it, you could fall into some serious trouble. It's been around since the 19th century when Alonzo Wheeler Jerome played it and experimented with it a lot, and even to today it's still played, which no one at master level or above is probably going to be sweating at all when you see this on the board. But it's an interesting line to play or to be played against and see how to deal with it. But really the point of this is just to practice for me, like making videos, and also at the same time explore one of my secret studies. So let's dive right in. So this position will happen only if you're an e4 player or you play against e4, and let's say you're black and your opponent plays e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. And this is really only going to happen if you are a Italian player and you play bishop c5 here. If I look at my own games, actually, from this position, I'm just going to pull it up real quick. I pretty much never play bishop c5 here. Like, I played it 22 times out of, looks like 173 times. I played other moves here, mostly knight f6 though, going into 2 knights defense. So this will only happen if you play the Italian game. And bishop c5, and this video is pretty much aimed at beginner players, so a lot of beginner players will play the Italian, and for really is one of the solid openings if you're playing as black. So just another day, minding your own business. You're playing the Italian, then bam, bishop takes f7, and don't play king e7 here, or king f7 here, or king f8 here. I mean, there's people that done it in the past, and it's not smart. It hasn't turned out well for them. Like, your opponent's giving you a free piece for pretty much nothing, so you might as well just take it. Fun fact: there's actually one master game on Lee chess from this position, and funny enough, like, white actually lost, or black actually lost it. It's the only one that's in the Masters database on Lee chess, and they just played king e7 in a Masters game, which you're like, what? What? Didn't it just take it? But whatever. That's what happens. All right. So of course, knight takes e5. Whoa, they have 2 pawns for a piece. Oh no, the competition is rolling for white. We're getting rickrolled off the board. Oh no. All right, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the road yet. We just play knight takes e5. It's just simple moves for us. All our moves so far have been logical and simple. And then from here, the natural follow-up for white is queen h5 check. There's another line that can be played. We'll look at that in the next chapter of this. But queen h5 is the main move. And here, you'll be fine as long as you don't play king f6. And if you play that, immediately you're gonna get this is what white was hoping for when they played this whole sequence of moves, because after that, queen f5 check, king e7, queen takes e5, and you can see that white is going to have some time to go back and forth with checks and eventually pick up the bishop, and then castle kingside and develop the pieces, and everything's gonna be okay. So don't do that. After this, you can play either king e6, which is like the strongest move, and you're basically saying, okay, I know what I'm doing here. I'm prepared to face anything. If you play g6, first off, you're giving up the piece. I mean, you can play this way, and after that, just queen e7. And if you are provoking white to go into this line, you should be expecting queen takes h8. It was actually a blunder here. And then after this, you're going to count on getting some initiative against white. So it's a little trick for you to play there. I'm not recommending it. And then this is a move. Again, why would you play this? It's not the worst, but at the same time, not necessary. But at the same time, for white, they're still down a piece. We have a lot of pressure. Even if they try to trade queens with knight d5 right away, there's not. I don't see anything great for the position for white. But all right, after queen h5, just play queen e6, king e6. Fearless, going into the middle of the board. Then there's nothing really. We're not in danger anymore. Most games actually have continued with queen f5 here, and then another move just with the king that seems silly, but it's logical. King d6, and then after f4, c6. And the best move is actually f takes e5, but that's not really played because a lot of people are just going to expect d5, which isn't, it's not the best move, but it's a top move, and why would you allow this? Plus you have double pawns as white, so you're not really going to expect that move. Most likely you have queen e5 here, and then we just castle, and or we develop our knight and get our rook to the middle, and then white's probably gonna, well, they can't even castle, so this is definitely a safe position. So with that, that's pretty much the first chapter. Let me look over other lines white might try. Could try after, so instead of going back to king e6, knight queen f5 is one move, just, and then f4 is another move, which is immediately attacking the knight, which if you retreat the knight, then the bishop falls. So what do you do here? Well, there's a lot of moves. It looks like even queen f6 is a move, but just d6. You're opening up the bishop almost, or a little bit, defending this bishop, and you're going to have to give up one of those pieces anyway, so giving it back with the pawn capturing in the center is pretty good because d4 is going to come eventually. So f takes e5, d takes e5, and then knight c3. If queen f5 actually, then king d6, and yeah, this looks pretty good for us. So knight c3, knight f5, knight f6, and then the most common move online by far is queen f5 here. And after king f7, queen takes e5. The funny thing is, let me look up lead chess again and look at the lines. So from here we've got bishop d4, 100% for white, rook e8, 100% for white, bishop d6, looks like a draw there, but most of the time, or a lot of times, white's actually won this position, and there's even bishop d6. Alright, but what's the move here? And yeah, I'm just looking at it again. It's only been played one time. And see if you can spot this tactic. That, I mean, we're already doing all right, but if you want to come out on top, there's one move here that just is going to shock white. And that move is bishop f2 check. Bam! Of course, if your wheels are turning in your head, you realize that, okay, king can't take it. It's a small trick that, I mean, maybe they'll take it, but obviously they won't, because if you take it, then there's knight g4 winning the queen, and that's GG. So that's not going to happen, most likely. There's several moves for them to play. King f1 is an interesting idea, and depending on where they put the king, if they put the king on f1, then you want to bring the rook to f8, and again they can't take it because of the fork, and you're getting ready for moving the king out of the way, moving the queen back, moving the bishop back to d4, and like, I mean, the king is lined up. Like, this is not looking good, and there's no way for white to castle anymore, and these pieces are still stuck over here. So is white going to be able to get any initiative whatsoever when all our pieces are pretty much ready to get out, and the rook's coming out next? Like, I mean, this is a dream position for us. And if they go to e2 instead, we just play rook e8. It's just a rule of thumb for this one. Wherever the king is, if the king goes to f1, bring the rook to f8. If the king goes on the e file, bring the rook to e8. And if the king goes to d1, actually you just have bishop g4, and then after knight, rook e8. And yeah, the pressure is very strong on this file. And black is winning. Well, black is pretty much already winning when they played bishop takes f7 at the beginning, but they didn't know it yet. So this way, let me just review. We started from the Italian, and then the surprising bishop f7, king takes f7, knight takes e5, really the only move to follow it up, and then knight takes e5 is really where it all begins for the Jerome. And now we already looked at queen h5, and we saw that, okay, the best move is just king e6, and then after f4, which is probably the most aggressive move, we're not really afraid of queen f5 because of just king d6. But f4, just simply d6, giving back the piece or one of the pieces, and then developing. And if they play queen f5, we already know this. So that was that chapter. Let's look at another variation where instead of queen h5, they can play d4. And this looks scary because you're like, oh no, like they gave back two pieces, they gave up two pieces, but now there's a fork. And actually, I think, let me look at the stats for this one. Yeah, white is doing okay here. Half the time they win. If we look at just lower rated players, yeah, about the same. So this is a lot. This is probably trickier maybe for some people to face, but we have a brilliant move here, just queen h4. And what's our threat? Our threat's just to take the pawn on e4. If they take our knight, then we just checkmate them on f2. If they take on c5, then we capture with check. And if they block, then we just take on g2. So whatever happens, we're already getting back. We're only down one piece, or we're up one piece. They're down one piece still, and we're ready to develop and whatever, and continue our game. So let's see. I had some in the study. I have some funny moves that you could play here. Queen g5 is actually another brilliant move, because you are now becoming the attacker and you are sacrificing material, and that's a good game. You're gonna win this position because you've sacrificed your queen. So, and another move, king f6, which is pretty much the only bad move here. And it's actually mate. So yeah. But the only move really that you really need to consider is queen h4. Another move is king g6, but that's just it doesn't make any sense, to be honest. So queen h4, and probably the most logical move, if I were being honest, is just castling, and then queen takes. Again, we're going to give back one of the pieces, but this way at least we have active pieces and we're ready to connect our rooks by getting both these pieces out, and things are going to be good for us. So rook e1, queen takes d4, and are we going to lose a piece? Who knows, because it doesn't look like there's any pieces that are going to be attacked anymore. Or so you might take here, we just take, and as you see, you're getting back those two pawns, and giving back one of the pieces, and at the end of the line we're going to have equal material but just up a piece, the same number of pawns. Let's see, if they play knight c3, then we just retreat our bishop, and again our knight is untouchable because of the threat of queen takes f2 mate. So they might play g3 here, and then we play the queen back again. That that knight is untouchable, and after they fork us again, we're like, oh no, all right, the gig is up, something's gonna happen. At that point we play queen f3, and now we're forking, and if they capture, then we capture with check, and as you can see, it doesn't matter where the king moves, we're about to recapture on d4, and all our pieces, we got all our pieces back, so we're going to be totally winning. So that is that, and then of course just to show, yeah, that's mate. So instead of g3, they could play d takes d5. Again, that's mate or castle. And then here we just play knight c6, and alright, okay, white can claim compensation because they have the center, and oh no, they're going to be able to push their pawns and attack us. Well, we're okay to get back a piece because we're already up 2 pieces, so we've got to be doing pretty well here. So this was just a quick overview of the d4 variation of the Jerome, and here the key move to remember is just queen h4. So just to sum all that up, let me show you just a quick example. This was one of the first games, or one of the early games played by Alonzo Wheeler Jerome in the 19th century against William A. Shinkman, courtesy of game something non-com. What is it? Anyway, forget the website I got it from, but let's see if it says it in the PGN. It doesn't. Alright. Anyway, so it started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, Italian opening, and bishop takes f7. Check. King takes f7, knight takes e5, and knight takes e5. The start of the Jerome, pretty much. And queen takes h5, or queen h5, check. King e6, and queen f5. And actually, this was a correspondence game, which I don't know why anyone would play this in correspondence, but this guy was enjoying this opening a little too much, I guess. So, king d6, and then f4. And you'll see this a lot online in different games if you go through. But we're already up 2 pieces. We're going to give one of them back. When you're up material, most likely the rule is generally to trade. So you'll see people put their queen out as soon as possible to try to trade it off. And just like here, in many variations of it, it's always throwing the queen out so we can trade it out as soon as possible. Here, there's intermediate check, and then queen takes e5, and the queen drops back because, no, they didn't want to trade queens when we're still down material. Knight f6. And all the moves are logical from black at this point. We're just developing pieces, and rooks can get into the game next. d3, king e7, knight c3, g5. And here, black is already getting aggressive. It's funny, white can't even castle, and they can't even like castle to connect the rooks and start attacking, because this bishop here on c5 is controlling g1. So rook f1, putting pressure on this knight. c6, and you wonder why is the knight taken, but obviously the king is helping to defend, and c6 stopped the knight from coming into d5. So g3, d5, and of course whenever the king's caught in the center of the board, and you're ahead in material, you've got the bishop pair, of course you want to open the position. So that's what black tries to do here. Bishop d2, and white actually might be threatening to castle here. So bishop g4, attacks the queen, drives the queen away. Where is she going to go? Well, it looks like there's only one spot, queen g2 or queen g1, or it's queen h1, but that's not really active whatsoever. Rook from h to f8, and look at our beautiful development over here. All our pieces are active except for this rook, which may or may not come into the game a little bit later. h3, knight takes e4. Nice, brilliant move. Just let you pause and think about what's going on here. Well, if you take this bishop, looks like we have a discovery, which could be pretty lethal, actually. Just taking the knight with check, and the king that cuts off that square, and the king can't go here, so it's gonna have to block, and then queen's gonna take. So yeah, this is it's looking pretty bad. So instead, bishop f4, and if you took this way, then actually I'm not exactly sure what's all going on there. That might have actually been a better move. Knight takes e4 or d takes e4. Yes, it was. But instead, bishop f4 and g takes f4. G takes f4, rook takes f4. And again, same thing. We're not worried about them taking on f4 or the bishop. So white plays knight takes e4. And white, Jerome, even though strong player, he's probably faced a lot of people. He obviously destroyed them a lot with the Jerome, or Jerome wouldn't have existed to this day. But in this game, didn't defend that great against the straightforward attack by black. And again, it's a correspondence game, so these guys have all this time to sit there and think about it. It's not like a blitz game where white's going to have a lot of initiative, and black, if they go wrong even a little bit, the game could be over. Here, this person has days, maybe, or hours just to sit there and think about what the next move is. So the fact that you try this in a correspondence game is kind of interesting. But of course, we live and we learn, and this is probably a good way to learn how to face it. And for us, it's a good way to show us how to play against it, since this is probably a close to perfect way of refuting it. So knight takes e4, rook takes f1 check. Very great move. And a better move would have been queen takes f1 here, but instead king takes f1. And after rook f8, white actually resigned. The reason is if the king goes back, well, one, you see these bishops are dicing like this in the position. So I looked at this earlier. What is the threat of king goes back? Yep, okay. Queen goes back, king goes back, then queen takes b2. Yeah. And this rook is en prise. Plus, yeah, the back rank's looking pretty shaky. You don't really have time to capture. You kind of have to. But computer says this is mate in 11. And yeah, I can already see this is not looking good whatsoever. So white resigned at move 21, actually. Just a really short game in miniature to show you the power of the Jerome Gambit and how to face it if you ever see it as black. I don't expect a lot of people to see this. If you're playing the black pieces, you're definitely welcome to try it out in your own games and probably bullet just to see how you like it and see. Just practice your attacking skill, mostly. Probably against lower rated players, not against higher rated players. You probably get destroyed really easily, but maybe not, because a lot of them may not have studied this. But everybody that's watched this video obviously is going to know what to do. So don't try it against anybody who's seen this video. So with that, thank you for watching, and hope you have a good weekend.